Hello everyone, I hope you had a nice coffee break. I did too. Actually, I went downstairs very quickly and see farmers market. We are very lucky. Farmers market takes place at the foot of the building we live in every Saturday, and so therefore we get very fresh organic vegetables every week. But anyway, this Kanchi Sosan's story we shared, it's been really debated for a very long time. I would say for centuries, as long as I know, as long as I see in the text. Buddha is always often depicted as almost like a doctor. And then people say, if Kanchi Sosan has a Hansen's disease, there was no cure. So, what is the reason he is depicted as someone who's cured? The reason is, of course, as we always say, utilizing this phrase, Buddha is the doctor who cures incurable diseases. Yes, of course, Hansen's disease is not really cured, but it is really about the core of our own life, or core of how we view our existence as life. That portion is corrected, and some people even say, well, if Kanchi Sosan was cured, maybe he didn't have Hansen's disease. Maybe what he had was scabies. So I said, okay. Seriously, in the academic world, people actually debate those things, but it really shows we really don't take Buddhist teaching as a conceptual, ideas. If you start to do that, it starts to become a little absurd, So the next one is something you are very familiar with. Let me open this on shared screen. We keep talking about this case so many times. Yes, of course, because Dogen does the same. Of course, there's a reason, because this really kind of hit the really strong mark Buddhist teachings and how we view space and time, how we view our life from a very strong Buddhist teaching point of view. So as everyone probably knows, case number 8, shall we say, from the Shoyoroku, Book of Serenity. And then according to I know personally, this case is often quite popular among the shusos who has to choose a case from Shoyoroku for her or for his own Hossenshiki, Dharma combats, which is one of those gateway all of us as ordained priest in Soto school has to go through at one point or another. But in the United States, I actually participated at least a few occasions when this koan was discussed. And to be honest, I don't think people are really actually clearly understanding about this what this koan is about. Because their focus was so much on the other things that's really not very important. So you probably know about this. First of all, this is a made-up story. It's like a tale. It's a simile. Koan often does that. If the koan comes from a real dialogue, from a biography, that's not the case. But when it's collected as a koan book, sometimes some stories are made up story, and then you have to kind of show it from the beginning. So what's happening here is there was a man whose name is Hyakujo. Here it is. I haven't changed this translation yet, so it still shows the pre-existing available translation. This Baizan is hyakujo. So hyakujo sometimes comes to the main hall and then offers expanding the dharma. And then each time he does that, there was always this old man. Obviously, this is a monastery, so regular old men shouldn't be there because it's a monastery, and so therefore this jodo, coming to the dharma hall and expand the dharma is for the students who live there. And then anyway, when Hyakujo lectured in the hall, there was always an old man who listened to the teaching, then dispersed with the crowd. When crowd disperses, he didn't remain there, and he just left together with the whole crowd. But one day he didn't leave. And then so therefore, Hyakujo asked this old man saying, "Who is it standing there? Who are you? Excuse me, I've been noticing you for quite a long time, but we haven't met properly. So tell me who you are." And then this old man said, "In antiquity, in the time of ancient Buddha Kashyapa, I lived in this mountain." Again, in this translation, it's really blurry, but first of all, Kashobu is an imaginary Buddha. Kashobu is one of those 7 old Buddha. As a matter of fact, 6 old Buddha, because 7th we count Shakyamuni Buddha. When I was telling you in the previous lecture, I was showing this, Kechimeku, our lineage chart, which is recited every day. The first portion is the imaginary Buddha, which is a symbolic way of talking about this teaching is nothing invented by human being. Religion is often human-made, but Buddhism doesn't do that. There's no God. It's really about how this universe is running. And it's, of course, this is not observed one, but felt one, because it starts with discovery of how this is running. So when you say, someone said, from ancient times such and such, you can immediately say, oh, okay, this is a tale. This is some kind of metaphoric tale. And then it says, I lived on the mountain in this translation, but what they are saying is juice. This is that translation of live in this translation. Oops, sorry, something happening. Okay. This word, he recited as the abbot. So, of course, there was no monastery. Before Hyakujo's time, Hyakujo opened this monastery. So you can immediately tell in this first line, okay, this is a metaphor of something. And then at that time when I was the abbot, one of the teacher, young fellow came up to him. A student asked, there's a greatly cultivated man, which means enlightened person, still fall into cause and effect or not? So in this case, the student also thinks cause and effect is a sequence of the time and space. So in another word, you do something bad or you commit sin, if I use the same word as Kanchi Sosan used, this becomes the cause of Hansen's disease. So therefore, there's a cause and then you do something bad. Next moment, you feel the retribution. And then it is, the retribution is also good and bad, yes? So, but if once you are enlightened person, do you still have that kind of experience? Do you still under the, law of causation, causality? That's the question. To that, the abbot said, this imaginary abbot said, I answered him, this young fella, Furaku Inga. This is the very interesting portion, and it's very difficult to keep translating. Furaku Inga. Inga, in is cause, ga is fruit. So there's this cause of fruit, and then eventually it grows in the sequence of time, then it becomes a fruit. So inga is actually Sino-Japanese Buddhist terminology of causality, or law of causation. Furaku, not falling into causality. So he says, no, he, as a matter of fact, in this case, because I think I am a fully enlightened person. So no, I don't fall into I'm not affected by cause and effect anymore. By doing so, he fell into the causality, and he fell into a wild fox body for 500 years, 500 lives. 500 lives is a typical expression of forever and ever and ever and ever and ever. It's like what's the word, title of that movie? Groundhog Day. Bill Murray's movie, over and over and over and over and over. So it's kind of like a humorous joke. I was a very enlightened person, and then therefore I completely clarified the Dharma. So therefore I don't fall into the cause and effect. Then I fell into the cause and effect. And furaku is also a pun. Raku is fall down. So therefore, in this case, he falls down into lower realm. So it's an animal realm. And also, this humorous case intentionally picks shape of fox, because in China and Japan, fox has been believed as a shapeshifter and then tricks people. So it's a little like a joke and also using the pun. But this is a typical way of common view of how we view, or how we were educated or programmed to view time and space, and also sense of value, so to speak. And then to that, this fox asks, now I asked you, Hyakujo, my teacher, give me a turning word for me. Translation says, now I ask the teacher to turn a word in my behalf. I would translate, please Hyakujo, please give me your turning word. This is a translation of ittengo. Itten is just one time you turn 180 degrees, and this word, one word, turns you around. So I think many of you do have experience of receiving turning word. I have. Sometimes it's not a word. Sometimes it's some kind of phrase I coincidentally read. Some moments of distress, I open something, and then just coincidentally some phrase comes to me, and I feel, wow, this is so strange. That was exactly the answer I was looking for. Or sometimes some event happens, and then usually some specific phrase doesn't hit me. But because of the situation, because of the ripenedness of the moment, and inside of me, this phrase just hits me and makes me feeling really aware of something. That's ittengo. And then for that, Hyakujo says, humai inga. And this is a very interesting word. Mai is the word, origin of the word is, when the sun rises or sun sets, there's a pivotal moment where sun is not particularly out of the horizon, but not particularly within the horizon. Then the light starts to come out, and then light starts to illuminate things, but it's still kind of darkish. Therefore, not particularly really see the shape of the things under the light, but at the same time, you kind of feel there is something there. That moment is called Mai. And then it says, who is not? So therefore, not Mai. So therefore, yes, you are aware Inga is a causation, causality, right? Law of causation. You are aware, but it doesn't particularly shape it is clear or unclear, in another word, good or bad, animal, heavenly, success, failure. You are aware, but you do not create that dichotomy. So that word changes him. And by with that word as a ittengo, this old man was totally enlightened words. I think this is very interesting. Dogen really likes this case, and he quotes this from time to time, and this is again exactly in sync with this mondō. Curiously, this mondō, case 8, is in sync with the case number 1, number 3 in chapter 10. In another word, it's going beyond the dichotomy. You know, together with the Kanchi Sosan's, let's say, the dialogue with Eka, and also the dialogue between Tozan and the dying young student. I often talk about this, but maybe not in this lecture series. In my own personal experience, this koan really manifested and made sense many times. So maybe this is also going to give you some sort of exact, examples, and maybe this may make you resonate better with this explanation. In 1994, I think that was the year first sets of cocktail treatment of antivirus for HIV was invented and started to be offered to a group of the people to start with. But until I would say 2000, almost millennium, it wasn't really easily available, and also first cocktail treatment required 3 pills to take, and it has to be like every specific such and such time, 3 times a day, and then window period. That means if you don't take the medication at certain particular stretch of hours, there's a little bit of a window period. Maybe you can be late such and such, or you can be early such and such, was only 3 hours. So therefore, many of those people who are on that treatment was, carrying this alarm clock all the time. And then sometimes it goes beep, 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 and then they remember this is exactly the time they have to take the medication, and you have to do this within 3 hours. So it was very difficult for these people to travel out or spend some time outside of your apartment or house, etc., etc. And then before that, there was no particular medication. When I started the serious practice, one of the places I spent some time was Zen Mountain Monastery in upstate in New York. There, I was introduced to this man whose name is Robert Savage. He was a pianist and composer. And by the time I met him, he had a quite advanced case of AIDS, quite visible and symptomatic, but he was a very strong, solid sitter. And despite the fact of his physical discomfort, he kept on sitting through their monthly 7-day sitting. And once, actually this was the first time I ever joined the 7-day session, my seat was right behind him. So I sat through 7 days looking toward his back. And then sometimes I can catch very easily physical discomfort and some sort of, quite high level of pain is going through his body, but he sat through. And then at the end of the session, I was properly introduced to him, and because this is the time I determined I was going to take care of my dear friend in my own apartment, for the rest of his whatever the years it must have been left. It was actually 3.5 years after that session. My friend died after 3.5 years. And then I had a long conversation and I got to know him, and I was really impressed with this man and his really deep understanding of the Dharma. And then he eventually became a good friend and almost like an advisor as a senior practitioner to a friend of mine I was taking care of in my apartment. And both of them really went through, there are quite a few numbers of organizations and hospitals who are offering trial medication. So this trial medication, you have to really consent that you do know it may not work, and most of the time it may not work. And it may cause quite strong, physical discomfort, because some of the trial was also radiation therapy, etc., etc. And the medication had a very strong side effect. But these two probably spoke to each other and went on and on and on to become basically human guinea pig to take those medications. And then both of them told me they are quite clear that it probably 99% it doesn't work, but they really understand they are going to die sooner or later, most possibly sooner than later. But this short time of life, in another word, it's given life, whatever the extended given life, they really can devote this whole being of existence itself into as a number of the service, because it's just a one number, so it's like a 1 grain of millet, but it's going to contribute for the future. So I was really hugely touched by their attitude. So I was really supporting, particularly my friend who's dying in my apartment, going through this in my apartment. Even up to the point, the doctor finally said, at this point, there will be no chance that you can take on to any more trial medication. It was 5 months before he died, and he was quite frail. So therefore, he will not be able to, offer his whole body and mind into next, medication process. But until then, they kept on trying, knowing very well they are going to die. So, that conversation, or shall we say case or dialogue, Tozan and Tozan's student had really manifested. And then shortly after his death, it's so ironical. I think Robert died in 1993, and this friend of mine died 1994 in May. So in just a matter of a few months after my friend's death, the first successful cocktail treatment was really started to be offered. So yes, they really did contribute. And then eventually it will be more and more advanced. And currently, it's just one injection once every 3 months or so. They even have this prevention medication. And then when COVID, pandemic came, the reason why this pharmaceutical company was able to come up with this vaccine in such a short time is because the formula is basically same as HIV antiviral medication. So yes, in another word, these people's life actually saved millions of life in just a matter of 30 years or so. So it really makes sense to me. And so if you don't say this is a failure or success, this is something you decide or society decide for you. If you don't get into that, and if you really start to clearly understand how this is made, it's just a moment by moment of manifestation of just unimaginable numbers of connections. What's here is just connections. And then, so therefore, it's not the sin. It's not your fault but you have 100%, 120% of possibility and responsibility to determine what you do now with this. So that also becomes a one turning mind word, and then it really clarifies the issue of what it is, what this space and what this time is, and what this is. So that's why it becomes a turning mind word. This case has nothing to do with why fox, why not raccoon kind of conversation. I'm sorry. It's a bit like I was, talking about this strange thing about some academic people who really don't understand this Kanji Sosan's, dialogue, start to say, well, why Hansen's disease is healed? But we are not talking about the healing of Hansen's disease. Buddha is a doctor, but Buddha is the doctor who cures incurable diseases. Regular doctor can heal, cure curable diseases, but we are not talking about the physicality of the diseases. It's the core of the existence we are talking about. And in that sense, yes, he was healed. Even some academic people, or even some, people who don't really understand this conversation, even says, well, if Kanji Sosan was healed out of some disease, it wasn't Hansen's disease, maybe it was a scabies. And I just had to laugh at this line when I first read about it. Anyway, let's put out one more thing. Now, this is Dogen's writing. Because one of our tasks is to always connect with Dogen's, teaching. And also, we are in awe how consistent this correct line of the Buddha's teaching really somehow, even though sometimes it was at the risk of dying out, but someone always appears, like Nagarjuna appears, or Dogen appears, and then examine and hold this, correct answer to all the way to us. And then, of course, this is Shoakumaksa. Let's see. Oh, sorry. I think this is no. Hold on. I do have a plan to re-record the whole series of Shoakumaksa. So if that happens, actually see this in this. But I pulled out, almost the entire fascicle is really hitting this point, but I would like to, the evil mentioned here, evil, who often we mention in our conversation, is usually about something else. Belongs to the evil nature listed among good nature, evil nature, sorry, can I see? And interminate nature. This nature, they are really talking about, he's talking about, when we say good nature, bad nature, for instance, in Confucius thoughts or Taoist thoughts, they always say there's some kind of static nature in us. It's like a Brahma and also some kind of Atman inside. I don't really know very well, so I'd rather not to quote this, but if it is easier to understand, God and Spirit, And so therefore, people often say, is this spirit inside me, is this a good one or bad one? And then also reconstruction of Abhidharma. Now in Mahayana era, it's called Yogacara. And Yogacara is also very educated and they were really heady and they start to say, this is a good nature, this is a bad nature, this is such and such. But then Dogen said, remember, the nature itself is actually unborn. And then good nature, intermediate nature, also unborn. In another word, this good, bad, somewhere in between it's actually not something static. Yes? And then therefore uncontaminated, a real mark, yet our meaning is just a manifestation of what's happening in this true reality. Yet there are many kinds of dharma here within these three natures, but at the same time, when it really starts to show, it's felt as, many different ways. Among the evil, there are similarities and dissimilarity between the evil of this world and the evil of other world. Similarity between prior and later times, similarities and dissimilarities between the evil of the devas and the evil of the humans. Evil still is the divergence between what is called evil, what is called good, and what is called intermediate in the way of the Buddha and secular world. In another once it starts to appear, tend to call this is good and this is bad, but then you really have to recognize some different way of we are calling this and different call. This is good and this is bad, and then do you recognize it changes by distance, time, and places? For instance, the good. This is talking about good and evil by devas and good and evil by human being. But we live in 21st century. We can really recognize in the way like what we think is good is we human being on this planet uses these resources for human being is good. But from alien point of view, who lives somewhere else in this universe, who just lost their own living environment, they like to look for some habitable planet and come to all the way to Earth and then kill off human being, and then instead they like to live here. And that's supposed to be good for them. So good and bad is very different from how you say, you know what, I'm thinking about last season opening Thanksgiving Day for Stranger Things on Netflix. I'm sorry, I have to say that. But anyway, I'm making it kind of humorous so that Dogen's language actually travels very well. But it is really true, don't you think? I recently discovered there's a new biography of Oscar Wilde. So I'm reading this new biography of Oscar Wilde and just struck so many times, wow. Only just about 40, 50 years ago, even in some country like Great Britain, imprisoned the people who are, LGBTQ into the prison to the point that people suffer so much so they die in the prison. But look at us now. And then, of course, in America, there's another force to bring that back into the Oscar Wilde's era, etc., etc. So you never know what happens. As a Japanese person who was born right after the war, and then experiencing this whole entire change of the society, up and down and up and down, and then what's good, and it's now suddenly what's bad, and what's bad was suddenly what's good. I can really totally understand what Dogen is saying. It's just so, viscerally. So thus, when we study true Dharma, Anuttasamic Sambodhi is his way of describing what it is. When we hear the teaching, better practice and realize the fruits, it is deep, it is distant, it is wondrous. So in another word, you really have to recognize when you really study the true reality through Gautama Buddha's wisdom, it's very difficult for us to understand. It's so profound because we are so programmed in the way how we normally see the time and place. We always think time as a linear line, but as a matter of fact, it isn't. Because you really can't go, if it is a linear line, if it is something really statically existing on the linear line, we are supposed to be able to go back to, physically there, but we can't. And then, And then when you really start to see the society and in a little bit of stretch of time, and then you really start to see, yeah, you know, who determines right and wrong? Who determines good and bad? Who determines beautiful and not beautiful? You know, the standard of the beauty in Dogen's time is so different from the standard of the beauty now in Japan, and as well as here as well. So it is, yes, when we heard and when we study Buddha's teaching first, you feel, yeah, I got it. Actually, we really don't get it. We constantly have to bring ourselves back into this, you know, observation, exploration, and studying and clarifying over and over and over, until we really start to recognize, well, my behavioral pattern is actually started to be a little corrected, you know, in alignment. When you come to the point of someone you meet somebody, let's say on the street, and this man is kind of volatile, and he says something really offensive to you, that's the type of the moment it's really, you know, testing your understanding. And is your response, I think normally, particularly here, this is the culture, never you should apologize, you know. You don't say sorry in this culture. And then you always have to express yourself here in this culture. So there will be always, someone says something, you're supposed to say it back. But then when Dharma starts to sink into us, we start to have this little pause when something like that happens and afflicted to us. And you see, well, this is also another manifestation of his own interdependent origination. And I'm looking at him from my own manifestation of my own karmic interdependent origination. So if I had something similar with his background, maybe I'm not responding this way. Maybe I'm kind of joining them. So you have a little moment of this. But at the same time, in this real world, you have to somehow do next motion. Next motion may be disengaging, which is also a very good tactics, or you may say something a little gentler and more understanding. So it doesn't really feed into like larger argument. So when something like that happens, it's a very good opportunity to see your own response. And did you actually start to have Dharma soaked into your system? You know, this is very interesting. This unpassed body, this reality, we hear, whether from wise friend, this is okay. You may be, you know, studying with a right teacher. You may be studying authentic text, and you hear this all the time. And then, even though you really understand this is the moment by moment by moment, and then if you really deeply understand, your response will face toward wholesomeness. In that sense, you know, this do no evil, do something good really starts to make sense. Otherwise, you may be studying something really wrong. So it is not true Dharma of the Buddha. It can be the talk of Mara. So in another word, if you are studying some kind of a debatable technique, and then you start to have this opportunity like, oh, this is a great opportunity to talk back and insult him back and trash him into the pieces, then it's completely wrong direction goes. So anyway, I think this is also interesting in synchronous of the teaching. Let's say 97. So let's go to the next mondō. Let's see. I picked mondō number 7. So that's 307, page 307. Now, this one is quite instructive. Let me read this. The question. At that time, question from the teacher to test the student. Mañjuśrī Bodhisattva asked the foremost Dharma Bodhisattva, son of the Buddha, according to what the Buddha has said, wherever there are any beings who accept the uphold right Dharma, they will all be able to cut off all the afflictions. But why then is it that there are still those who accept and uphold right Dharma, yet fail to cut them off, but rather instead follow among with greed, hatred, delusion, and follow among with arrogance, concealment, anger, enmity, jealousy, miserliness, deception, and flattery, even to the point where they are turned around by their power and have no resolve of abandon them, if they are able to accept and uphold the Dharma. How is it that they still give rise to afflictions in their mental actions? In another word, the question is, you see all of those people who say, let's say, I'm a Buddhist priest, or I have been studying Buddhism for a long time. I have devoted my life to Buddhism for like such a long time. I'm a very good student of Zen, etc., etc. And then you do see them all the time in the lecture series and etc., etc. Yes, they are really listening, but then how come they are such a awful people? So that's the question. I think this is really interesting to me. And then the answer is, this is very interesting. At that time, foremost Dharma Bodhisattva responded with verses saying, Son of the Buddha, please listen attentively to the true meaning of what has been asked. It is not solely on the basis of extensive learning. Okay, you have to be very careful with this. The one is able to enter the Tathagata's Dharma. Okay. Yes, I see so many people who are so knowledgeable about the Dharma and knowledgeable about, I always use internet and I have AI. And then my AI really responds all the questions I have, and all of those, statistics and historic background of this teaching shows, and I can read it to you. But then it says, no, true Dharma doesn't work that way. It is as if there was someone who was floating in the water who, due to being terrified of drowning, then died of thirst. That's too bad. He's surrounded by water, but then dies of thirst, failing to cultivate the practice of the Dharma because this person failed to cultivate the practice of the Dharma. In another word, you study the Dharma, but you don't practice the Dharma. You study the Dharma as a conceptual information and knowledge to boast, but you don't bring it into your life, and then you actually practice it and proves it and then trust it. So therefore you didn't do that. It's almost like you are surrounded by water and then dying of thirst. Even where very learned is just like this. Now this word very learned is tamon. Now let me open my notes first and then let's start from there. Okay, share the screen again. I wonder if you remember in my previous lecture, I kind of laid the foundation for this chapter. Remember at the beginning of Avatamsaka Sūtra, there's a scene. There are lots of imagery comes in, and this imagery is also quality of our practice and quality of Dharma, and it's also personified. And then one of them was Tamonten. Tamonten is a Sino-Japanese translation of Bishamonten. Bishamonten is originally Sanskrit and Vaishravanya. It was originated in Indian mythology, but somehow to explain the Dharma, to start with, if you bring the Buddhism to one Indian culture into another culture, we have to use our pre-existing concept and pre-existing word to explain it. So on the process of that, I think in India, when Buddhist teaching was born, it was quite new. So therefore, before they come up with their own, created terminology, they had to use, pre-existing word. So on the process of that, all of those imageries and ancient indigenous cosmology kind of creeps into Buddhism. And then it's going to be presented in a different way. So by that time, this Bishamonten, Vaishyavana, is supposed to be a protector of Dharma, in another word. Actually, to the Japanese psyche, it went in very easily because our indigenous thought system recognizes the energetic field in, everything around us. We are very similar, actually, DNA-wise, it is true that we are very similar to American Indians, Native Americans. Native Americans also have this belief system of, actually, I think it is quite accurate. Sometimes when you step into some room, let's say, resided by someone who's really angry, as soon as you step into the room, don't you feel it from the energy of the room before you even open the conversation? Or you visit some place like deep in the mountain, it always has been revered by, let's say, in Native Americans' time, I think they called Adirondack Mountains as a sacred mountain. And particularly in the area where eventually became Norwegian Catholics retreat place, which was sold to Soto's group, now called Zen Mountain Monastery. That area was a sacred mountain. I once had an opportunity to have join the hiking group to go to the top of this mountain, and air is definitely very different. I'm sure there's a scientific explanation as it is surrounded by this river and lake, so therefore there's ozone levels different, and also there's some kind of scientific research is made that human ear doesn't catch some kind of vibration, but then whole world, whole nature is always sending some sort of sound that's not catchable by human ear, and some of the vibration is really in sync with some sort of healing, kind of felt as a healing, but it's not heard from here, but caught by whole being. Therefore, there's a scientific, explanation, but I don't need those scientific explanations. Once I go into, you start to feel, wow, it's definitely different, and you really start to feel this really refreshing feeling, and then you really start to say, oh yeah, there's this energetic level of sacredness. So I guess in that culture, this sense of this is a Dharma protector and this is that, this is this, kind of crept into Japanese culture very easily. So currently it's also mixed with not only Buddhism but also Shintoism. There are lots of Bishamonten all over the Japanese area. But Bishamonten is originally some energy who is so compassionate, and he's really attentive to listen to people's lamentation, people's, venting, people's sorrow, and then you really like to listen. So therefore, it was started to be translated as listen a lot. That's tamon. So listen a lot is also eventually used. In this case, this very learned is actually translation of tamon. So in other words, you listen and listen and listen, but in this case, you just listen by your head, by your concept, and yes, it's kind of fun to tackle with Buddha's teaching conceptually, don't you think? I know many of you are so highly educated person who loves to read, who loves philosophy, and so therefore, yes, there's such an incredible pleasure to kind of read through those very complicated. I really have to confess I enjoy it too. But if you just stay with that, you will become like Edward Conze. I'm sorry I said that. You know the story probably. But anyway, okay, hold on. And I just reading on, so I'm going to, change this. So I want to bring your attention to following verses, okay? The next verse says, repeats over and over this word tamon. The translation is very learned, okay? It is as if someone were to prepare exquisite cuisine, and even though hungry, still not eat. Failing to cultivate the practice of the Dharma, even when tamon is just like this. It is as if someone was skilled in prescribing medicines, yet remained unable to save himself from his own disease, failing to cultivate the practice of the Dharma, even when tamon, even if you really conceptually understand, you enjoy going to listen to Okumura Roshi's conversation, Okumura Roshi lecture series over and over and over and over. As long as you are taking it as a conceptual knowledge, if you don't bring it to your own life and experience it, sorry, it doesn't work. It is as if someone was skilled in sorry, I just read that. And the next one, it is as if someone devoted himself to counting others' jewels. This is a very famous expression. We loved this from Kengon-kyo. So eventually became kind of repeated, almost like a Zen word. And then eventually it became in Japan as a colloquial expression. It is as if someone devoted himself to counting others' jewels, even as he himself didn't have half a penny to his name. It's translated as a jewel, but originally it's takara. So takara actually means coins, so it's money. So that's why it translates into not even half a penny. As if he himself didn't have a half of a penny to his name. Failing to cultivate the practice of Dharma, even when you hear and over for the last 45, 50 years, attending all the Genzoe, still doesn't work. This is a very interesting portion. That's why there are lots of awful people in the Dharma community. That's what the Kengon-kyo is saying. Let me show you something on the shared screen. Okay, hold on. Right. This is the expression. Don't even have a half of the penny is mizukara hansen no bunashi. It is translated as not even a half of a penny for yourself. As I mentioned, it comes in the many texts, including Zuimonki. In this New York group, we recently read Book 5, Section 2. Do you remember? Hold on. I'm going to change the screen. I think most of you have this book, and I recently heard that this book has sold out. So, but at the same time, this is available as an ebook as well. So you can actually buy ebook as well. This is Dogen's Shobogen's Zuimonki. We often just refer this as a Zuimonki. Zuimon is follow and hear. Mon is exactly the same character as a tamon, mon, hear, yes, and learn, another word. This is when Ejo was his Dogen's attendant, and so therefore it's just like a situation as that was a wonderful situation I was talking about. I was always all alone with our Okumura Roshi in Sanshinji for many days, and then I kind of followed him around, and I followed his own daily routine exactly as it is. And then I should have written down what he told me to my questions. Then I could have published my own Zuimonki, following Okumura Roshi. And in Japan, my Japanese teacher was Honda Roshi in Myokoji. And as one of the older person who was reciting in Myokoji, I often functioned as his jisha. And then I think he was more comfortable to have an older person to be a jisha. And jisha is a personal attendant. So I had a lot of conversation with him all the time. He was more talkable person rather than Okumura Roshi being so quiet. So I had a lot of opportunity to ask, and he just extends his explanation. I asked so many questions about the Sawaki Roshi, because Honda Roshi was functioning as a personal attendant when he was a teenager to then already very established teacher, Sawaki Roshi. It was a really fun time. I should have wrote down that Zuimonki as well. But anyway, Zuimonki, that's the meaning of Zuimonki. So this particular Zuimonki is Ejo's Zuimonki for Dogen's teaching. Now, when you open, maybe I should open the shared screen. Shobo Genzo Zuimonki. Let's see. See, this is Mon, and then you see this is Mon. And study and learn. Book 5, section 2. Let me just read this. In case you don't have it. Page 193 is the version for this bilingual version. Dogen also instructed, primary concern for students of the way has to be, first of all, to detach ourselves from personal views. Oh, here we go. This personal view is always the problem. Yes. Because personal view is not really my own view. It was actually embedded by our background, education, society, economy, language, etc., etc. And then often it's not really reflecting the true reality. To detach from our personal view is not cling. It's meaning to not cling to our bodies. Even if we penetrate the sayings and stories of the ancient and sit unceasingly like iron or rock, if we attach to our bodies without letting go, we will not be able to attain the way of the Buddha's ancestors. Even if we practice for 10,000 eons or 1,000 of lifetime, it goes without saying that even if we are able to understand the provisional and genuine teachings or the sacred teaching of the exoteric and esoteric scriptures, but we are not free from the mind that clings to our body. This body is meaning this static sense of me. Yes? If you really cling to me, this body and mind, then if you really sit through like session after session after session, and you really study and study and study, and you read the text for 12 hours a day, and you always participate in teacher's lecture, but as long as you're clinging to your body and mind, in other words, your static sense of me, if you're really looking at everything from me side, then it's almost like we vainly calculate others' wealth without owning even a half penny of our own. That's actually a different translation of the same expression. So again, translation sometimes confuses us because each translation is slightly different, and we sometimes miss the point. Oh, they're actually talking about the same expression that has been carried on from Avatamsaka Sūtra all the way to now. So I think maybe 100 years or 200 years from now or so, maybe if Buddhism still exists in the West, somehow someone starts to say, hey, this is so confusing. Why don't we all get together and decide the translation, one specific, expression, so everyone will know what we are talking about. Maybe that's something like that happens. It had happened in India, China, and Japan, but it took about 300 to 400 years after teaching arrived. So we will see. We have to have a really broader point of view. But anyway, this is very interesting to me. The reason it is so interesting is that I also have to be very careful with myself. Because I'm the type of the person who loves this intellectual, conceptual game. But at the same time, I'm very lucky because I was never 100% monastic, because I had a need to make money and make a living to start with at one point, to take care of my friend who is dying in my own place. And then it costed so much and he couldn't contribute anything. And I really determined I'm going to take care of this. And then after that, I really have to keep on working and working. And then eventually my work switched into basically inspired by my experience taking care of my friend into completely into end-of-life care realm. So in another word, I had no other choice but incorporating what I learned conceptually into my real active life, which also offers me so much, scenes or opportunities to really clarify what exactly the teaching is actually talking about. Of course, it depends on the realm of the work you have. I'm sure it is very difficult to, incorporate this if you're a hedge fund dealer or butcher. But the thing is, it's very interesting as the, teaching starts to soak into you, your way of making living starts to change. It's almost inevitable and it's so organic. And you start to lose interest in what it used to interest you, but now it doesn't anymore. It was very interesting for me that the first job, full-time job I got for end-of-life care system here in the United States offered me 1/5 of the salary I used to make in the other job. But I was so happy. And I remember this little impact of, oh, this is 1/5 in comparison to only like 5 years ago. But then eventually I have this internal, this strong sense of, wow, I'm so happy. I made a transition. It was very interesting. So this is a really, first of all, a very important kind of warning to myself. And also, I really look around the community in the United States, and then particularly so-called Zen community. Unfortunately, this is the fault by, miscommunication from Japanese side. But, I don't think Japanese people actually knew that there was such a thing like Americans and Europeans interested in, Zen or Buddhism. So, bringing Zen to America, bringing Zen to Europe, particularly in America, it was an accident almost. No one meant to bring Buddhism, or no one meant to bring Zen to America. What happened was Suzuki Roshi comes, and Suzuki Roshi notices, wow, interesting, these folks, young people in San Francisco. Coincidentally, this is again immeasurable interdependent origination thing, and time and place. It was a time and place where many of the young people were starting to question about the pre-existing, value system because of this politics and war in Vietnam, etc., etc. So they started to broaden their view, and then resources searched outside of the previous traditional resource, and they started to take a look at the Buddhism, and they were really attracted to it. So instead of having the temple exclusively for those traditionally viewing Buddhism, all the Japanese American folks, it was more exciting for Suzuki Roshi to welcome those really like open-minded young folks comes into Zendo with a barefoot and then flared bands and flower print, shirts and etc. etc. So eventually he decided, this is actually more fun for me to teach Zazen to those young people. So it was just kind of like accidentally happened because of the time and place. So unfortunate thing what happened was eventually his activity was viewed with a little bit of sense of envy and jealous. So therefore there's another group of the people starts to come and try to almost take over the market almost. And those people are the type of the people who are leaned toward the Rinzai school. And then also the group of the people who leaned toward the Rinzai school who were criticized after the war because of the statement they made during the war. During the war, it was very difficult for the Buddhist community to survive because the military government was very anti-Buddhism. So to survive and maintain their wealth or temple, etc., etc., they had to kind of ride on to the governmental propaganda. So there was a group of people who really criticized the Americans and British and calling them an evil and etc., etc. Rode on to this military propaganda. Curiously, it was the group of the people leaned toward the Rinzai school. And then after the war, of course, everything just goes turn around and upside down, and they were now being criticized. So they were losing the ground of the practice and being in Japan. So then they started to look toward America and look toward what Suzuki Roshi was doing. And then I think they actually tried to take over the situation. But instead, they started to open their own places. That really started the origin of the divisiveness of understanding of the Dharma within Zen community in the United States. So it's kind of unfortunate development. But on the other side of the group of the people of, in Japan we call them at the other side. I'm sure they call us as the other side. But other side of the group of the people who are leaned toward Rinzai practice usually takes up on Rinzai school's theology, meaning this is some kind of a noumenon to grasp, but not by intellectual understanding, but by, koan zazen. So in another word, you receive some sort of a question and you sit with a koan and try to resolve and give the answer to it, and then prove that you are right, you give the right answer, then you climb one step, another step, and step another. And then when you clear those 300 koans, then you become enlightened person, and then now you are called Roshi. In Rinzai school, Roshi is a very technical terminology. It is someone who cleared up 300 koans and became enlightened person. There's actually only 80-something Roshis, in this whole world under the specific system. So it's very confusing to me that some Americans and Europeans claim they are Roshi, but then when you take a look at the registration of Rinzai school, they are not listed. But anyway, in that system, they say don't study and don't read, and you have to make your own brain completely, blank. That is a misunderstanding was born during Tang Dynasty. There was a swing of politics. There was actually there were 5 times back and forth between in favor of Buddhism, no, destroy Buddhism, back and forth, and then in favor, destroy. Currently, as you know, about during the Cultural Revolution in China, Communist Party basically went into full swing to destroy Buddhism. So in Chinese history, there's this really unfortunate pendulum. is going on. But what happened in Tang Dynasty was really as extensive as communist China did. They destroyed basically all the temples and burned all the Buddhist texts. So therefore, after that happened, even though you come back to the temple, you don't have anything to study with. So therefore, around that time, there was a little bit of starting to birth of this thought system of, it's a noumenon called Buddha nature. And then your practice is, the ultimate goal is to sit and have this psychological experience, physiological experience they call kensho, meaning seeing and clearly grasping the nature, Buddha nature, is the ultimate goal of Zazen. The thought system kind of rolled on to the situation. There's actually nothing to study. There's no text remaining. So therefore, the misunderstanding kind of rolled on to the situation and then brought all the way to century and century after this attitude of you don't have to study. Buddha always studied. Buddha always offered teachings, and then people gathered and studied his teaching. This is the correct tradition. But at the same time, it is really true, as this text also says, it is not about conceptual understanding. It's about the balance. So this balancing is really lacking in our community in America now. I hope this isn't the situation in Europe. I haven't spent enough time in Europe, but I hope this isn't the case. On the other hand, in Japan, we have a very serious problems about the young monks who are, young sons of the father who is the abbot of the temple, because of this unfortunate, or maybe it's not completely unfortunate, but some very characteristically peculiar system called the Danka system. I hope you probably have heard about this, but traditionally Buddhism tends to be kind of a hub of anti-government because of the nature of the teaching. But of course, it's not that simple and pure and sincere. And sometimes Buddhist temples become a hub of hiding the treasures of the wealthy, rich people, and who goes against the existing government. So then in that sense, the Buddhism community become a hub of some sort of anti-government. But in a purest sense, it's always anti-establishment, in another word. So therefore, at the beginning of the 17th century, when after nearly over 100 years of internal, we call this as a Sengoku Jidai, meaning warring time, Japan lost the central, government, and then it was divided into hundreds of small clans, and each one of them started to fight against each other to take over Japan back again. It lasted over 100 years. It was really bad time for Dharma as well. And then at the beginning of the 17th century, there was a guy whose name is Tokugawa Ieyasu, finally totalized those powers for some way, somehow put everything together, and then brought another 300 years of non-internal war. It was again flipped into very peaceful time. But to control the power of the Buddhist temples, he was very skillful in one way, or kind of cunning. And then he brought into this system called the Danka system, which is a very similar system like a medieval Catholic church. So each town has to run around one specific temple, and then temple registers birth registration and death registration. And so therefore, it functions as almost like a city hall, and functions as if how to discover the who's who. And then each temple has to basically declare what school this temple belongs to. And then so therefore whole people's living is living around the temple, and this is called the Danka system. Danka is originates from Sanskrit word dana. Dana is giving, but this dana, dan portion, ka portion is families. So the family units belong to the temple and then keep supporting the temple. So this is called the danka, and then it's still there. And then towards the end of the 19th century, what happened was, again, system changed from a samurai clan to back to imperial government. And then imperial government really wanted to destroy everything what the samurai clan government tried to cherish. So what happened was, they decided to support the Shinto shrines instead of Buddhist temples, because Buddhist temples were supported by, Tokugawa clans. So to do so, they were kind of manipulative and kind of strangely modern. What they did was, Buddhist priests tend to be respected because they are single and they are monastic. So they brought the new regulation: Buddhist priests can marry, can officially marry, can officially have family, and then also you don't have to be monastic all the time. So even Sawaki Roshi's time, many people are really debating, should I, shouldn't I, should I, shouldn't I? And Sawaki Roshi was the person who really thought, well, this is probably a manipulation by the government, so I really need to stay on as, single person and then, way seeker. But many people were offered to live in the temple and become an habit. And if those people decide to marry, then, you have a family in the temple. And then regulation goes, only the abbot and abbot family can live in the temple. So what happens is, if the abbot doesn't have the son who will take over, become a priest and take over the temple, the entire family will lose the place to live. So unfortunately, for a long time, I'm talking about nearly 100 years by now, and then it accelerates up to now. Currently, not only Soto school, but the entire traditional Buddhist schools, almost over 90% of the newly entering Buddhist priesthood are the son or grandson now of those Buddhist temple. They are not particularly interested in Buddhism, but they need to keep the family business and the place to live. So this is really becoming a really big problem. And of course, rest of us, like 10% or 20% of us, are serious seeker. So we have to come into the same place and practice together with those young folks who have absolutely no interest in Buddhism, but you have to go through this to acquire the license to become the abbot, to keep the lifestyle, or basically free living, So, and those people don't study. So, in a very different way, this problem of not studying also manifests there. But at the same time, it is not about the conceptual understanding. So it really, requires this balancing. And also, in the United States, I don't know if this is the same situation in Europe as well. Again, I do understand the Europeans, the first group of the people who are interested in even translating Buddhist scriptures as early as 1860s. So those are Germans and French and British and Italians who really got interested. So maybe this is a little different situation. But in America, when you go to the university lectures, and then even if these are the very selected numbers of the universities, very high level of the universities, and they boast they have these long-standing Buddhist faculties, but I see what they are doing is almost like a tackling of Buddhism, almost like human anthropology, and particularly from the aspect of high culture Occident looking low culture Oriental, and then looking at this as almost like examining behavioral pattern, behavioral psychology, and then history, and etc., etc. So it's very odd to us who is a practitioner. I even went to this lecture series on Dogen by Columbia University, and then lecture halls are basically half practitioner and then half academic people. And as the academic people are all the presenters are academic people, as the presentation goes on, many of us start to look at each other like, well, this is really absurd. What they're talking about is just like a complete misunderstanding. They're presenting Dogen as a world's first naturalist, world's first natural conservationist. And then they are looking at things like Keisei Sanshoku as a nature conservationists' first literature. So one of the older folks who was, I think, was Japanese American, like first generation Japanese, second generation Japanese American, who studies with Pure Land Shinran schools. Person, I think I have met him before many years ago, finally raised a hand and said, I think what you're talking about is a little out of focus. These academic folks were like so furious, and they were so fervent to show their, authority of understanding the Dharma. But one of the presenter, who was supposed to be the head of the faculty, couldn't remember Shikisokuze, Kusokuze, Shiki, form and emptiness form. Like, and he was saying, do you remember that line? What was that? What was that? But anyway, so yes, it is really true when you hear the word academic, particularly in the American Buddhist community, particularly among the people who are actually seriously practicing. There are people here, even though it's a small group of the people who really dedicated their life for the development of Buddhism in America. Yes, it is offensive to hear these people talking about like, I am the authority, I know better than you do kind of, conversation. So we still have lots of work to do. And from my point of view, we are under the specific lineage, Dogen to Nishizawa to Sawaki Roshi, Uchiyama Roshi to Okumura Roshi. We are the people who have a reputation. We have a very strong sitting meditation tradition, as you know. And then also we have a very strong tradition of studying. And then we also combine it almost as if, well, I would say 70% sitting, 30% studying. So it's a lot actually. This is the way I'm really trying to continue, and I'm trying to kind of propagate to the people. Don't separate between academic knowledge vis-a-vis practicing is our message. And it is very important to feed each other practice portion and learning portion. Some time ago, Okumura Roshi was contacted by this specific Buddhist monastery. And then for some reason or another, this monastery is very proud that their system is completely monastic. But at the same time, they are also quite well known. They don't really have any study program going on. So it's a complete separation. And then for some reason or another, they wanted the Okumura Roshi to come over to give Genzo-e. And then when I first heard about that, I actually told Okumura Roshi, I don't think it's a good idea. So, and then Okumura Roshi was like, oh, yeah, okay. Yeah, I understand why you are saying that. And then COVID came, kind of fortunately. So therefore, his physical visit to this place was cancelled. But instead, they decided to have like a short term, instead of 5 days, 7 days, like over the weekend lecture series. So it wasn't even, Shobogenzo. It was done on online only. And then I remember so clearly, I've been looking at this online lecture, kind of with a little bit of apprehension, like how this is going to manifest. And interestingly, the abbot didn't come to greet for the opening. Okumura Roshi keeps, he's such a natural person, and he never really talks about this. But I'm always the type of a person, I have to feed in this information. He's actually held the highest rank in Soto school, in the theological education. And he used to be the head of international department, and he used to have to go to Eiheiji like 2 or 3 times each year. Not only to report what's going on, etc., etc. He is the only person who is his generation, Eiheiji approached to acquire him as the teacher of their next Genzoe. And then he's the only person who talks about Dogen both in English and Japanese. And his book also is available in Japan as well, as he writes in Japanese as well, but also his English book is retranslated into Japanese and sold there. When you go to any bookstore in Japan, as long as the bookstore has Buddhist corner, you go in right there, his book is there. But this Zen monastery, usually when he goes, he's invited by some other, organization, abbot comes out and then greet to him. But this group didn't do. Instead, they sent out some kind of assistant, administrative assistants, and he says, she says, I'm such and such, I'm a monastic of such and such place, which probably meant, yes, I may not be able to speak about Dharma, but I'm a monastic. And then she introduced Okumura Roshi as he's a very well-known academic person. But when you say academic person to us, it's actually an insult. And I don't know if she meant to do that. I really think there's a little bit of intention there to their students. But you know how Okumura Roshi is. He's like, and he just goes on and on and on in his own pace, in his own, style. So, but I thought, wow, this is like a typical manifestation of what's going on in the American Zen community. I felt so sad on that day. So, one of my tasks is, yes, it has to be a combination, it has to be a balance, because it's not a two separate thing. It feeds into each other so that you can develop, more wholesomely. Well, what else was I talking about? Oh, yes. I have only 3 minutes to go. So before I go into the next case, I just want to talk about the episode I love to talk about. Difference of tamon, being tamon, and don't get it, or study, but also practice. And then you really develop deeper and deeper, clarify deeper and wider. Typical example is this episode. In year 2000, it was 800th anniversary of Dogen's birth. So therefore, in Japan, we had big ceremonies. And then Soto School in North America wanted to do something about Dogen's, commemoration of 800th anniversary. So what happened was Stanford University, as one of the leading university in Buddhist study academically, decided to host the event. It's a panel discussion and also, lecture series on Dogen. And then in this panel discussion, I think there was a representative from academic representative from university, and then from Japanese side, as a very well-known Dogen study authority, Okumura Roshi was invited as a paneler. And from San Francisco Zen Center, one of the most senior practitioner, Mel Weitzman, was introduced. And they were having a conversation. And Mel Weitzman shared this wonderful episode about Raksu with Suzuki Roshi. You might have heard about this story, and it's also written in the book. And also recently, Okumura Roshi again introduced this episode in his lecture series. I love this episode because it's so suggestive. What happened was, when in old days, when Suzuki Roshi started to, open the door for all these young people in San Francisco to come to Zazen and sit Zazen, there was no translation. So therefore, at the end of Zazen, we recite Takesage, Daizai Gedapuku Muso Fukuden. That wasn't translated. So therefore, young Mel Weitzman approached Suzuki Roshi. We recite something at the end of Zazen every day. What does it mean? And then I think at that time, we usually wear Raksu all day long. While we were working. So Suzuki Roshi was wearing Raksu, and then he was starting to explain, but then his English wasn't very good. I have heard his recording, and I couldn't actually figure out what he was talking about in his English lecture. So therefore, by that time, I think Katagiri Roshi, as a Katagiri sensei, he was there and assisting Suzuki Roshi. So Katagiri Roshi went to the shelves of the offices where those translations may be available. So he started to go and they started to touch the drawers, and Suzuki Roshi said, "Oh no, it's okay, Katagiri-san." And then he looks at Mel Weitzman and he touches this Raksu and said, "It is about love." At least that's what Mel Weitzman heard. And then Mel Weitzman said that was really one of the moments it just totally turned me around. So, how the presentation was. But then this academic person, representative from academic world of this Stanford University, kind of listens and laughs at it. And he says, in Japanese language, there's no distinction between L and R. Actually, I still have a problem pronouncing it. There's no L, there's no R. So our R and L are a bit like Italian R. It's Ra, it's not La, it's not Ra. And also there's no distinction. Actually, we don't have the sound of V or B. We have a B, but not it's B. It's not V. So therefore, he says, most possibly he was saying, this is about robe. It's not about love. And then Okumura Roshi hears it and he just, how he is. He just genuinely feels, wow, this is really funny. And he laughs and laughs and laughs. And at the end he says, oh, yeah, it might be so, but you know what? It doesn't matter because the essential, most important, essential portion of the teaching was correctly delivered. So I just love this episode. And then this is exactly how we are. We combine both, but what we are really interested in is to deliver the core portion of the teaching. So therefore, to do so, it doesn't really matter if you don't conceptually understand it, as long as that portion is delivered. And then your life starts to change from self-love to other love, So that is all about what I need to say about this particular koan in this chapter. So now we have a lunch break. So we will meet again at 1:30, and then we study one more koan, mondō, from this chapter. Okay, thank you very much. Have a nice break and see you at 1:30.